Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Motor City Man Mouth. Guess what? This bad boy is going to be rebranded. We're going to do a lot of things never done before, and I am proud to be joined by my new co-host on this program, Steve Ballesteri. Steve, welcome to the big show. I'm glad you follow me wherever I go.
I'll follow you anywhere, my friend.
I
And
know you.
thanks for asking me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, this ought to be pretty eventful.
That's mildly stating the obvious. All right, Candy Ebling was looking at what we have in store. And Candy, what are your initial thoughts about what you were putting into this whole thing?
I was kind of surprised, not normally up your wheelhouse, but I've learned over the years that you are a gunslinger and you're willing to try different things, and that's what this show is all about tonight.
Yeah, and next Wednesday we're going to have a triple header. I'm going to have Molly Murphy coming on at 7, then Steve and I go on at 8, then we have the sports exchange at 9. And the nice part about what Molly and I are going to do is promote a non-profit organization that talks about helping disabled people through the use of horses. I think it'll be pretty good. We need to have her on early so that we can, as the what do you call it, appetizer to get to the main event here. And that's exactly how I have it perfectly structured. All right. Let's get to it, everybody. Be the judge for yourself. It ain't as bad as I'm making it sound, but I'll tell you one thing about our platform, the South Florida Tribune, we're not a one-trick pony, and tonight you're going to see a little bit of that as well. All right, Katie, we're going to start off with Dusty Baker, served in the military and the Marines from 1968 to 74, and he just recently finished managing Team Nicaragua in the WBC. Katie, what are your thoughts about Dusty Baker and his military background?
I think the military has a good way of developing character, and it helps so that because he's been a leader of men. Let's face it, as a coach, you're leading men, you're leading boys, because let's face it, some of them are very young. So as a coach, you're not just coaching the team, you're coaching them as men, and kind of helping mold them. And I think military background helps him with that. It gives you discipline, it teaches you structure, and I think those are all things that are very good as a coach, to help him and that's why I think he's been around for as long as he has. I mean, he's as a player, he played from 68 to 86, but then as a manager from 93 all the way to 2023, and now in the World Baseball Classic. You don't last in an industry such as a professional sport manager unless you have good character and discipline and all of those traits that I think he started out learning with the military.
Steve, some thoughts about Dusty Baker.
I agree with everything Candy said. I'm here to tell you, I mean, the military is great for young people. I mean, it instills on you a sense of self discipline, leadership. I mean, these are all things you learn while you're in there. You learn to become a member of a team. And the one thing about the military that equates perfectly with sports is you put, if you're going to be successful, you put personal accolades behind team accolades.
Right.
And that's, I mean, in the military, everyone says, "Are you just part of the big, green machine?" And that's the way. That's the only way it works. The guy. Unfortunately, you bust a lot of bubbles when you say this, but guys like Rambo and whatnot, Chuck Norris and those guys love their movies, right? But that's not really the military. It's all about working as a team. And Dusty Baker, look, I mean, you don't have a 60-year career in professional sports if you're not doing a lot of things right. And that's exactly, again, I mean, these are the attributes that you learn in the military, right? You learn how to be a mentor. And you have to be at times a tough dad. Sometimes you have to be the coddling dad, depending on the situation. And that's what being a good coach is about, right? You
Right.
know, good coaches know the guys they have to lean on hard, and they know the guys they have to pick up.
Right.
And that's one of the hallmarks of great coaching. And for him to last this long, and now to coach Nicaragua, hats off to Dusty, man. I mean, he's seen it. He's seen a lot through the years. I mean, think how much baseball's changed since he was a rookie.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, the bottom line is military, as you well know, you've dealt with it. Okay, it's about discipline, and I'll tell you, you're in a structured situation. I went to a little networking event, and we talk about boundaries and structure. And with all due respect, that's what you have is you have boundaries and structure, and I think that's something that's pretty interesting as well. So yeah, Dusty Baker is what he has. I mean, he's headed to the Baseball Hall of Fame. His career speaks for itself. I know he tried to work with Nicaragua, but they're 0-7 all time in the WBC. That had nothing to do with it. The guy wanted to get out there and try to manage a little bit, and more power to him. So, again, like I say, structure and boundaries, I think, is one of those types of things that we all wonder about, and everybody has a different set of values on those as well. All right, Candy, I want to thank you for being on this segment, and we'll definitely see you on the Sports Exchange as well, and you'll provide us a little bit of a station break as well. So thank you, Candy.
Thank you, Candy.
All right, so Steve, as I get to the subject matter at hand, I want to set the stage in this manner. When people have asked me about the Iran, Israel, United States situation, I want to predate back to the Carter administration. Iran took the American hostages, and this ordeal lasted out for a period of time. I've always viewed Iran as a first-class pest. What ended up happening? It led to the 1980 boycott of the Olympics, and it also led to the 1984 boycott of the LA Olympics, and I was there. And it wasn't, and let's not kid ourselves, President Carter's administration, obviously, I don't think was as strong as most people wanted to do, and we felt like we were being pushed around by them. And Ronald Reagan wins the election. What do you think the Iranians do? They must have watched a lot of Western movies because they called this guy a warmonger. So when you call Ronald Reagan a warmonger, although he's a great actor, and I learned a lot, he's to this day one of my all-time favorite presidents, they scared the daylights out of him because of his reputation. Those people were out really, really quick. Why am I bringing this up now? Well, you know what? What's going on in this day and age? Israel, the United States have attacked Iran. They're trying to get this pest out of the way because of what? Nuclear situation. Now, our first topic of the day, we're going to tie it into the Russian military. And what I'm going to do after this is I want everybody to know about your military background in addition to what you cover. But I'm going to get this one out there first. The Russian military is preparing to take over Iranian nuclear site and its nuclear scientists after Russia lost all contacts with Iranian nuclear leadership. What are your thoughts about this, Steve?
I don't think that is going to happen. I can tell you that the last thing our country needs is Russia getting their hands back into Iran, especially when you're dealing with nuclear material. The Russians love to rattle that nuclear saber, and the last thing that any of the Western countries need is Iran with a nuclear device. And I know, like, a lot of people are hammering on the president because people either love him or they hate him, but you have to forget about that and look at the big picture. The president in these negotiations, which were nothing more than a stalling tactic by Iran, I think everyone should be, have realized that by now. They claim, now this is the country with probably the largest oil reserves in the world. They insisted they needed nuclear power for their country. The president offered them free uranium at only a 5 to 20% enrichment rate, which is only good for using it for nuclear power. If you enrich it past that, like the Iranians did, they were one step below weapons grade. They were enriching at 60%. There's only one reason why you would do that, and that's to build a nuclear weapon.
Right.
Okay. Now the president offered them free uranium in perpetuity, forever.
Right.
I get tongue tied there, but he offered free, uranium at 5 to 20% enrichment, so they could have their quote unquote nuclear power. They turned it down, and they pretty much told our negotiators that they were going to have a weapon, and then we would have nothing to say about it. Well, they've always, they're for the past 47 whatever years, right? Their chants, death to America, death to Israel. That's not just an empty chant. They mean that. And so that's why, all of this is happening right now, because they were trying to restart their nuclear program, and they were doing it under the auspices of building so many ballistic missiles that no one would dare try to take them out. Right. And that's why we've been going after the missiles. But for Russia, who likes to rattle that nuclear saber all the time, especially what's going on in Ukraine and with the Western nations there, the last thing we need is, anyone in the West is having Russia involved in this. And I think that we're probably going to stop that from happening.
So I guess what you're saying is loaded, and I'll say why, because of how I went out there and tried to build this thing up. Iran is a pest. And when you rattle that nuclear weapon like you're doing, it's like you're salivating and you're putting it out there. How else do you expect everybody to respond? You're first class pest. And what we're trying to do is make sure that pest or mosquitoes, when they get on you, their intent is to sting, right? And it hurts and it gets bigger. To me, the Iranians are a mosquito, and the objective here is to smack them down is what we're trying to do, so that they don't become a mosquito.
Well, they're much more than a pest, I mean, in the past 47 years, they've been responsible for the death of thousands of Americans. Okay. And it's well documented. And so, successive administrations in the United States have kicked that can down the road, right? They haven't wanted to, actually engage with Iran. They did a little bit during the Reagan administration when they tried to block the Strait of Hormuz back in 1987. And, they mined the strait. And then at that time, the president sunk a lot of their minesweepers. A couple of oil tankers actually hit mines at that time. I can't remember the exact amount, but I would think it was about 3 at that time. It could have been more. But anyway, this has been ongoing, and they're responsible for the death of thousands of Americans. And one of the things I hear all the time, we weren't at war with Iran. Well, they've been at war with us for 47 years, and they've made that abundantly clear.
Right.
So this was needed. I'm sorry, no one wants it, but they had no choice in this.
Totally agree. All right. So what I want you to do now is give everybody your background in terms of what you do outside of what you do with the New England Patriots, and then we'll continue to the next topic.
Yeah. Well, I'm a retired Army Special Forces warrant officer. I spent the majority of my military career in the 7th Special Forces Group. I was a Green Beret. Since being medically retired, I now am a journalist. I cover the New England Patriots, and do that, that's my first love. But I also am a senior defense editor for National Security Journal, and I write about military affairs and military equipment all day long.
So if there's anybody more equipped to be on this show than Steve Ballesteri, please let me know it is. Otherwise, I got the man to the right of me equipped to talk about this. So we're going to do this week in and week out here on the Motor City Man Mouse Show. Let's continue on. You talk about another guy making a lot of noise. That's why we title it Strong Words from North Korea's Kim Jong. Why? Because if necessary, he says, my army will stand with Iran. State media reports Kim Jong. If Iran asks, we will provide it with missiles against opposition. One missile is enough to erase it. Boy, those are strong words from the North Korean president.
Yeah, and he's famous for making those. I mean, he's always threatening South Korea. Right. But, and again, I mean, he would rather build missiles than feed his own people. I mean, North Korea is in horrible shape. They have people dying of starvation and disease every year. But, they spend all their money on missiles, and they've amassed their own nuclear weapons, which is the last thing the people in Asia need. Because, now, one thing I will say, I'll preface this. Kim Jong-un loves to portray himself as the loose cannon, but he's slick. His family has been ruling Korea for decades, and you don't get to do that if you're a loose cannon. You know what I'm saying? He loves to threaten, but he's short on following through with his threats.
Interesting, very interesting. Well, last week on the Motor City Mad Mouse Show, we talked about living conditions in North Korea. I'm glad you added more light because we're not done yet with this guy. He says, my citizens are present in Iran. There will be no compromise on their return. If one of them is harmed, I will join the war without any hesitation. From your main man here, some thoughts about what he said in this sequence.
Yeah, he also sent several thousand, I believe, North Korean quote unquote volunteers, right, to Ukraine to fight the Russians, but most of them have been wiped out in human wave attacks against the Ukrainian army forces and frontal wave assaults. But I've seen some of the videos that were coming out of there, as part of the stuff I write about, and it was absolutely horrible to watch, to see like 500 North Koreans charge across an open field of possibly about a quarter mile with no cover and concealment, just charging across against modern weapons and automatic weapons and artillery fire. You can imagine what that looked like, and none of them made it across.
So I'm going to ask you a question about this guy. He makes a lot of noise, and he seems like he makes a lot. Is he a guy that everybody around the world should be fearing, or do you think that really, I understand that he obviously talks big, but his actions, are they good enough to speak louder than his words?
Well, like I said, he loves to rattle the saber. Now, he did follow through. He promised Putin that he would send troops to Ukraine, and he followed through with that. Would I'd be shocked to see North Korean troops end up in Iran? No, I would not. If he tried to follow through with his threats about, launching nuclear weapons at South Korea, and I believe he made some mention about President Trump the other day doing the same thing. I mean, I wouldn't say you have to totally discount it, but I think the chances of that happening are very slim, because he knows at that moment, if he were to do that, North Korea would disappear.
Okay. Well, like what you just said, North Korea would disappear.
Because
So
if he
we
was
go
to
ahead.
launch a nuclear weapon at the United States or South Korea, they're going to respond in kind, and it will. I mean, that country will cease to exist.
Well, so with that said, okay, now you bring up an interesting point. There used to be West Germany and East Germany, and now they tore down that wall. Do you think you could ever predict in your mind that Korea could be all one instead of being broken down into North and South Korea?
I think eventually it's going to happen. I mean,
Okay.
the problem is again, you have an autocratic regime under him,
Mhm.
where the people have been, you know, totally under the thumb. I mean, they run a brutal dictatorship there, right?
Okay.
Um, and for them to be able to rise up against him, the chances of that happening, I think, are very, very slim. But eventually, I think it's probably going to come from within his own military. That eventually they'll get sick of him, and the country being in the shape that it's in, and
Hmm.
somebody's going to have to do that. But I don't think it's imminent in any way, shape, or form.
Just curious, let's face the reality. You're telling me the conditions there aren't very good, and he'd rather build missiles instead of feeding his people. And right now, he certainly has a stranglehold on that country, and it's been ruled forever. But you never know at some point down the road. And these are the kinds of topics we're going to talk about. We're not looking to take left wing, right wing types of things. We're talking about basic issues that we're trying to enlighten you on. So for those of you that were switching over, no, we're not doing that. Steve's a military writer. And we're both journalists. We're just trying to simplify some of the things that are going on. And this is something that's very fluid, anyways, as well. All right, we'll take our focus off a little bit and concentrate on. You're going to see a lot of things about capital punishment and the death penalty and executions on this show. I've done it before, and I'm going to do it week in and week out. And I'm in a state of Florida where Ron DeSantis is trying to get rid of a lot of the dead weight, so to speak, on there because of past crimes, and he doesn't want to start feeding these people when it's time to finally say you were obviously sentenced to this. It's time to clean things up. So we're going to talk about a situation where a man convicted of fatally shooting a police officer with his own service weapon during a traffic stop was executed. The key thing here is this, okay? You do not kill a cop. You just don't do it. And if you do, to me, that gets you in trouble, let alone in the state of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Some thoughts? Cops, you can't kill them. If you do this way, you might as well just you might as well get ready for your last words. What are your thoughts about the way Governor DeSantis is handling these things?
Yeah, I mean, look, the death penalty is such a thorny subject with so many people, and people bring up some really good points. Is it really a deterrent? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, look, there's so many people today. I think our country has gone through some really big changes, and the breakdown of the family. I mean, people don't respect life as they did in generations past.
Right.
That being said, I believe that the death penalty should absolutely be used in certain situations. I mean, if you're killing police officers or any kind of law enforcement types, I think that should be right on there. Any kind of terrorism charges, absolutely, it should be on the table. Because I mean, some of these people, I mean, then they commit some heinous crimes, and then you're feeding them for 50 or 60 years in
Exactly.
prison. And I mean, is that, I mean, is that justice? I don't know. I firmly believe that in certain cases the death penalty should be used,
Right.
but I'm leery about them using it too liberally, if you get drift. I mean,
Oh yeah, no, totally. I mean, let's face it,
there-
you're going to research these things a little bit about where you need to use it, but some of
Yeah,
these guys have
because-
lasted way too long, especially in the nature of the crimes.
yeah, and sometimes we've seen in the past, in all states, not just in Florida, but in all states, right? People who've been spending time on death row or years down the road are proven innocent. That's
Right.
why I think that it has to be very, very cut and dried,
Right.
with the circumstances. And in that case, I think, yes, I'm a believer in the death penalty.
Yeah, me too. I mean, and I think that's the important part about the whole thing is, and I'm going to mention individual cases, Steve, as we continue to talk about things on the show for sure. And I think this is just the first example of what we're going to be doing. 2 more topics I want to get to. Our target on these shows is about 45 minutes tops. That gives everybody a chance to absorb it. And this will give you an opportunity to go out there and get a feel for what we're going to do. We're trying to make sure that the South Florida Tribune is not a one-trick pony. We want to make sure that in addition to the sports, we're going to talk about entertainment. And Steve and I are going to take it upon ourselves to do this show every week and try to bring you up to date. This is not to go off our policy. It's just something that we want to make sure that we're able to do. All right, so now former Vice President Mike Pence lauded the Supreme Court's decision to strike down many of Trump's administration's tariffs. A 6-3 majority of court justices ruled that President Trump unlawfully used an emergency statute to impose for reaching tariffs trading partners. The former Vice President Pence praises tariff ruling as a win for Americans and the separation of powers. Your thoughts about where the Vice President stands?
Yeah, I was on the fence about tariffs, but at the same time, look, I know the president he was trying to tariff everybody, right?
Right.
But several good things came of it. I mean, he ended up negotiating much better trade deals for the United States through his tariffs, right?
Right.
I mean, we saw that, and that's one of the things that I would, like I said, I was on the fence with it. I thought he was wielding it a little too liberally again. With his, I mean, he was, anytime somebody said something he didn't agree with, he was raising their tariffs, and I think that it was wrong. But at the same time, a lot of that came about because we had such bad trade agreements with a lot of these countries, and I agree with the president that we're taking advantage of the United States,
Right.
and a lot of these trade agreements that he's come up with are now in place because of he threatened them with the tariffs. Now, yeah, I agree that the tariffs need to go, but I think people were taking it a little bit too far with that.
Yeah, again, let's not kid ourselves about the president. He is an established business person. That's what you have in office. Okay, he's not a push around or pushover. He's not that type of person. That's why he's making the position in Iran. That's why he's doing the tariff things. You certainly don't want to alienate places like Canada or some of your allies, and I understand that. So again, this is where I see both sides of it. But again, business is just simply business, and that's all there is to it. And I'm not trying to read into it, but if you're telling me that indeed that he's trying to negotiate better deals, it's pretty hard to really give the president a hard time. Now, if you want to get on him for what he did with the United States Football League, and you want to go out there and move into the spring, and of course you have Herschel Walker, I'm sure that's not a question he particularly cared. But many years ago, I got actually invited to his suite during the USFL championship game in 1984. And that's a different animal. Then you can get under his skin that way, and the NFL doesn't want nothing to do with them. But as far as this type of stuff here, I see both sides, and I'll leave it at that. Well, guess what? We're going to get off of these type of subjects, and we'll close out the show with one other topic. Again, it's not the amount of time you do a show like this, we want to make sure we keep everything pretty straightforward and down to earth. And I'll continue to come up with more topics as we go along. But these are things we're going to get used to
And
doing.
this is awesome, by the way, because you didn't share any of the topics with me. So this is like straight off the cuff tonight. And that's keeping me on my toes. So this is good.
But don't you like that?
I love it.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I mean, come on, SB, you and I are different. We can talk about, if you were to throw these topics at me and it was like sort of, the one thing people have to understand about our industry is anybody can be given topics to research. You and I don't need that. You and I are established journalists that have been in the business a while. The biggest exercise about this stuff is being able to think on your feet and not be a robot. And that's why we work so well together doing so much stuff. That's why we're going to keep these shows very, very.
That's why we get along so well too.
Oh, you and I get along so well. You're just brothers, man. I'm telling you, that's why I bring in some of these off the wall crazy projects, because we know what we're going to do with them. We realize that what the era that we're starting here now is something brand new that our audience isn't really familiar with. I get it. It's going to take a little time for people to acclimate this format. I don't care, because there's so many different ways you can share it, whether it's social media, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever. It doesn't. That's what it's all about. But you and I are just what we are. We know what we have to do, and we don't have to be spoon-fed in this business. We really don't. I mean, and that's why I picked you. You were my first and only choice to do this, because I felt with your background in the military and your ability to write about it, now it's time for you and I to be able to do something different and be able to put it in words and let people take what we have to say and be able to make sure that everything is put into perspective. And that's what we're going to do. So, all right, well, final topic of the night. And we're going to talk about Mike Tirico. Back in September, it was announced. I'm talking back September. It was announced he would contribute to opening ceremony coverage of the Olympics, obviously, and now and from California, where he will be preparing for Super Bowl week. I'm going to tell you one thing about Mike Tirico. This guy is the biggest pro that I have ever seen in my life, and the way he handled the Olympic coverage and the Super Bowl was nothing short of outstanding. Some thoughts?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on this. I mean, there's absolutely no gray area for me. He does such a fantastic job with the NFL. I'm a big fan of that. And I was curious of how he was going to do with the Olympics. I mean, I thought he hit it out of the park. He handled everything so well. It was like he had been doing this his whole life, with calling the Olympics. And it's a different animal when you're in the Olympic realm, rather because we're used to the NFL, right? I mean, this is what the business we chose because we love it, and it's a different animal. The way you approach it, the way you call the games, and the Olympics, it's completely different. And I thought he was fantastic. I loved everything he did there.
Yeah, he was out. Mike Tirico he's living in Ann Arbor, Michigan is what he's doing. But you talk about anything this guy can do. He's only the 13th different voice to do a Super Bowl in the first place. And what he does, whether it's a moderator, any play-by-play, this guy's just surreal. And the way he was able to multitask, the way he did was nothing short of outstanding. It really, really is. And, you just can't ask for a bigger pro than this guy. If there's a broadcasting Hall of Fame at some point, this guy's going to be in it. He really, really, really will. I mean, there's no.
And have you met him?
What's that?
Have you met Mike?
You know what? I met him one time, Steve, for Super Bowl 33 down in Miami. I don't know if we were on a bus going to the stadium or over in the Radio Row or that area. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But he's a super class guy. I mean, I would love to be able to see
that's the way I've never met him, but that's the way I picture him to be. I think he would be a super guy to sit down and talk sports with, or talk about anything for that matter. I mean, but we deal in the sports world primarily. So, I would love to sit down and talk football with him.
Listen, you and I can. Let me tell you something, Steve. The one thing I need you to work on for me to maybe break up the monotony is who's your radio guy out in New England? We need to get him on this show. Oh God, help
Bob
me.
Sosi, yeah.
Yeah, we got to get him on this show. Will you work on that?
The voice of the New England Patriots, Bob, a great guy. He was the voice of Navy football for many years. And then when the Patriots' longtime announcer, Gil Santos retired, they brought in Bob, who had, Gil was he was an icon in Boston sports. He had called the Patriots for over 30 years, and he was beloved there. And, that was big shoes to fill. And Bob was coming from Navy. And, I always like to pick at Bob because I'm an Army guy, and Bob calling the game for Navy every year, the Army-Navy game, we go back and forth with each other, but we always say the same thing at the end of the day. That's the only two teams that become teammates when they graduate out of, the respective academies. So, but Bob's a great guy. I'll reach out to him and see if we can get him on.
Yeah, this is a show that's ours. Okay, our Motor City Manmouth show is what it is, but this is Motor City Manmouth and you and I. So now you have it. You can tell them we do this every Wednesday night from 8 till 9 or so. You know what I mean? We'll get him on there. We'll just have a field day with it, Bob. Because I met him over at NSMA a long time ago. One of the super nice guys I've ever seen. Yeah. I like this guy. And now you tell him, Steve, that, we'll give our people a little break from the politics. We're going to talk some heavy duty stuff with Bob Sosi. But now you tell him we've got a place to bring this guy, you and I and him, and we're going to have a lot of fun. And this is a show, Steve, that you and I are going to do whatever we want. And I'll always, darn well, if you have any suggestions, just shoot me a text and we'll be able to do that. And anything goes on this particular show.
Well, back when I was still living up in New England and covering the Patriots down at training camp, I would like to sit right beside Bob in the front row when Bill Belichick would give his press conferences. And Bob and I would always, make jokes like, who's going to be what we used to call the guy today that would ask Bill something really dumb. And then Belichick give you that blank stare for like 20 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
Huge, uncomfortable silence. And we used to laugh because we were like, who's going to be that guy today? But I remember I used to always joke with Bob, I'm going to ask Bill when we get an Army guy, on the Patriots. Because Bill famously said one time, I'll never have an Army guy on the Patriots, because he's, grew up at the Naval Academy. But I do know that prior to him getting killed in Afghanistan, he offered a position for NFL player to when he came back from Afghanistan that he'd hold a place for him. So, but anyway, make a long story short. So this one day, Belichick was in a good mood. He was joking and with the media, which he never did, right? Laughing. He's in a really good mood. So I said to Bob, I always wore my Army hat in there.
Right.
And I said, I'm going to ask Bill today. He's like, don't do it. Well, we're right in the front row. So, and Bill can hear us whispering, right? So then, he finishes up his press conference and he looked straight at me and he goes, anyone else have any questions? Yeah. And he was looking straight at me. Bob is beside me. Don't say anything. And I just pointed at my hat and I gave him a look like, hey. And then Belichick smiled and said, well, we're done here.
That's amazing, really. Well, I got a story that'll top yours. You ready for this? And we'll talk about it more, especially when we get in person. I ran into a situation this past football season. All my interviews with the opposing coaches were good. But then I get the last game of the year. I'm doing my research, okay? And I saw an irony, okay, that Dave Dorn's birthday was the same as, my significant other as well as my niece, December the 3rd. Now, obviously, the guy got his tail kicked by the Miami Hurricanes 41-7. And all I said in this press conference, okay, was, just a little irony, blah, blah, blah. Your birthday's the same as well, this guy, and I'm going to send you the tape too, Steve, of it eventually. And that, because this guy, Dave Doran, okay, Doeren, is the biggest scumbag I have ever dealt with in my entire life. Now, keep in mind, what's so good about having you on is Steve Ballesteri is going to write my forward of Lessons from the Microphone Part 2. So let me tell you, you're going to see this story in there. I won't hesitate to do what I've got to do. And, this guy went off on a little tantrum for nothing. It's like, really? I mean, obviously trying to lighten things up. Albeit you got your tail kicked. I mean, this is just a tantrum. Like, you got a 50-some-year-old guy acting like a 5-year-old. It really, really was like a 5-year-old. And I went on. So what I did a few days later is I tore this guy apart, you know what I mean? And literally brought a lot of people on. Well, I'm not done yet with this guy. I'm just, number one, I've been around the business a long time. But I later did more research on him, and he doesn't get along with the media at all. Or he has a very bad track record with it. I don't know how a guy like him stays as the head coach of a major university with an indigent track record like he does, where the face of the university should be hoping that the media treats him decently and he doesn't act like a first-class joker and a jerk. And I could, since this is somewhat of a family show, I could say words far worse than what I'm telling you. But Steve, I'm going to tell you, Dave Doran is the biggest scumbag in all my 47 years in this business, and it takes a lot to become number one. But Dave Doran of NC State football is definitely it. And you know what? I may have said what I had to say on the air, but wait till I see this guy in person. If you think that Mike Tyson bit Evander Holyfield's ear off, wait till I bite Dave Doran's head off and I go back at him again. I mean, that's how much this really gets to me, because I can tolerate a lot of things, but but he's going to find out that I have a plan and you and I are going to talk about it anyways, but that's what you're dealing with. Belichick seems like he's easy compared to this joker.
Well, Bill was, and I don't, I didn't know Bill like some of the big guys did, but, just sitting there, he wouldn't give very much. He had to learn how to read, between the lines, of, as we used to say, read the tea leaves, right? Because he'd only throw out little, snippets. But the one thing that, if you asked a question that had to do with, like, say, they're changing a new rule, right? And how it affected the game and how it might, be looked upon like in the history of the game. If you got Belichick talking about the history of the NFL, just sit back in your chair and just make sure that voice recorder is on, because you're going to get about 15 or 20 minutes where he doesn't come up for air and he is just blowing you away with awesome stuff. And I used to love that because when he would talk about the history of the game, he could recall, games, the situation down in distance, how many, minutes were left in the game clock. I mean, he would tell you everything. And it was always a treat. That was the best part.
Great stuff. I'm going to be picking your brain about Belichick anyway, but you got to please work on getting Sochi on in the next few weeks or so, because now we have an opportunity.
I'll email him. Yep, I'll email him tonight.
Tell him you got your own show with me, and he knows me from the NSMA. Trust me, we're going to have a lot of fun on this. I mean, and that's be great. I mean, I'm not saying we won't put sports topics in here, but they're going to put some different ones you won't see on any of our other shows. Steve and I started in the sports thing, but now I've been able to find something that Steve is unbelievably very versatile. And when you find something like that where he's versatile, and I'm looking to rebrand a little bit so I'm not a one-trick pony, and I want to go out there and start doing more non-sports versus sports stuff, my goal, Steve, really is to stay in the business 50 years. I'm at 47. I don't see any reason why I can't do this for another 3 years and do some major networking locally and be able to find some hidden gems that come on these shows. You might find some of our guests are coming from our community, and we may be able to do softer topics, and you'll get to know some of these individuals on top of what we're doing. I mean, there's no set format or boundaries how we're going to do this. We're going to go out there and understand that the objective behind what we're doing, Steve, it's all human interest. And you and I know what human interest and feature stories about, and that's what keeps the news cycle going. We're not rewriting the amendments or another. We're not doing any of that stuff at all. All we're trying to do is just talk about life in general. Mm-hmm. So with that said, we're going to have Katie Ebley come on for a station break. Steve's going to let everybody know how they can get a hold of them. And then we'll just let everybody know the Sports Exchange is going to be at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Time. But this is a show that will begin before the Sports Exchange. And again, next week will be the debut. We're going to have 2 Motor City Mad Mouth shows debuting next Wednesday. We're going to have Molly Murphy on, Steve, and then we got the Sports Exchange, a triple header. So that means my voice better be very, very rested by the time we get to doing uno, dos, tres. I don't know Spanish past that. All right, Katie, station break. And then Steve will let everybody know, and we'll get ready for the Sports Exchange.
South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by your host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. Talks about his 40-plus years in the media business and how it has evolved. Old school media versus new school media. Get your copy today, whether it's audio or the actual book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there is a plethora of great content, so go check it out. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to advertise, sponsor a show, be on a show, have topic ideas, email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Last but not least, if you see the red subscribe button in that lower right-hand corner, that means you have not yet subscribed to us. What are you waiting for? Just click it like a share us with all your friends and family and turn on your notifications so you don't miss a beat. Again, South Florida Tribune's YouTube channel. Go check it out. Back to you, Scott.
All right, Steve, let everybody know how they get a hold of you, and let's get ready to do this. You looking forward to doing this thing every Wednesday night?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, with that said, please let everybody know how they get a hold of you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, or X as it's now called, at SteveB7SFG. On Facebook and Instagram, same. I'm on all the major social media pages, and I write for PatsFans.com. I've been there this upcoming season will be 16 years.
Wow.
We do a podcast called Patriots No Huddle, myself and Derek Havens, and this will be starting a 16th season coming up as well with Derek and I. So we've been doing that a long time. And I also write for, as I said, I'm a senior defense editor for National Security Journal. I write about military affairs, ongoing events that's happening, and military equipment and aircraft, naval ships, whatever they need me to write about. That's my gig.
Well, get ready to do this every Wednesday night. Every once in a while, he comes on Inside the Picks In, but I think Steve was probably graduated to be on Inside the Picks In. Now it's time for Steve and I, and that's why decisions was made for him to do our own show, and I think there's no better time than the present for Steve and I just to do our own thing, and that's what we're doing here, and that begins tonight, March 11th, 2026. Scott and Steve debut as a tandem, and we're going to be talking, you name it, we're going to talk about it. We're not backing away. The one thing I'll probably differ from is religion, because I will not touch that. But what we're talking about here is what I consider very safe, and that's what we're going to do. So that does it for this edition of the Motor City Mad Mouth show. On behalf of Steve Ballesteri, Candy is our producer. My name is Scott Morgan. We're at the Motor City Mad Mouth. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday night at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Time. Meanwhile, Sports Exchange is next. Good night, everybody.